Shabbat Shalom. Take a minute if you haven't yet already said Shabbat Shalom to someone around you to do that and just wish them a Shabbat Shalom. If you don't know their name, find out their name. I am pleased to be joined by Sarah Gurian. Some of you may know her. Sarah has been singing. I said, Sarah, how many times have you been on the beam? And she said, 1,000,000. She grew up here, and she's been a part of the Mishorim, the choir for years, and she's done solos over the years, but she's never done a full service. So this is her inaugural service. So thank you for being her guinea pigs. She knows what she's doing, though, so you're not really her guinea pig. She's a seasoned professional. So we're happy to have her here and welcome her family, who also is appreciating watching their daughter do her stuff up here. So let's begin with just a reading to help us all reflect on why we're here. Page 9 on the left side. If you're in the front row, the books are underneath the seats. Please join me. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that with justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. Shalom Aleichem is on page 24. Candle lighting is on page 20 something. It's in there. It's in the book, I promise. Come on.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
You can be seated. We have the pleasure of welcoming Arissa's family. How many of you are Arissa's side of the family? So welcome to Stephen Wise. L'chad Odi, this is for your benefit and for some of the other folks who may not know what's going on. Lecha Dodi is a classic psalm that welcomes Shabbat. We're going to sing verses 1, 2, and 9, usually, right? And we get to verse 9 on page 21. The words say, enter in peace, and we welcome the Shabbat bride. There happens to be a bride in our midst right now. But the custom is to face the doors of the sanctuary. So we all rise at the 9th verse, face the doors, and people bow to the left and to right, and to the right to welcome Shabbat, as if its physical presence is entering the sanctuary. So we invite you to join us. We'll start on page 20, and at verse 9, I'll give you the signal, and we'll rise and face the back of the sanctuary.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala Penei Shabbat nekabela Shamor vezachor bedibur echad hishmianu el hamiyuchad Adonai echad Shemo echad l'Shem u'tiferet ve'litila lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela likrat Shabbat lechu v'nel chakim mekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maaseh v'machshava techila lecha Dodi likrat kala Penei Shabbat nekabela
continue on page 28. Page 31 on the left-hand side, bottom of the page. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Well shall our hearts turn. Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai ma'ariv aravim. Please be seated. We're on page 36. A word about the way this book is set up. In general, the more traditional prayer is on the right-hand side with a somewhat reasonably close translation at the bottom of the page. On the left is interpretive poetry or prose that in some way captures a theme of the prayer and speaks the prayer in modern terms and modern language. So if we look on page 37, the name of the prayer is V'ahavta, and in Hebrew it means you shall love, and then the poetry is love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act, and so on. Are we going to do the Hebrew?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do the
Let's
Hebrew.
chant it.
So you can follow along then in the English of either side, or you can chant with us the Hebrew, which the melody for the Hebrew actually is the typical style of the way the Torah, when read from the Torah, the passage is chanted.
It's handy for future B'nai Mitzvah students.
If
to
they
know.
happen to be one time of the year, right, 1 weekend of the year.
I
The right
suppose.
week.
Well, like you said, it's the same trope.
Easy for her to say she's musical.
I'm also a B'nai Mitzvah mentor.
Go.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Page 41. Sing this song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravaged by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. page 43. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai parei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. We continue on page 253. We are? Oh. Back to page 42. False alarm.
Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu, leshalom, v'ha'amidenu, malkeinu, lechaim, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, v'taknenu b'etzah tova milfanecha, v'hoshienu leman shemecha, lehoshienu v'hagen b'adeinu, v'haser me'aleinu oyev, dever v'cherev v'ra v'yagon, v'haser satan milfaneinu u'me'achareinu, hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu, leshalom, v'ha'amidenu, malkeinu, lechaim, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, v'taknenu b'etzah tova milfanecha, v'hoshienu leman shemecha, lehoshienu v'hagen b'adeinu, ובצל כנפיך תסתירנו, כי אל שומרנו מצילנו אתה, כי אל מלך חנון, חנון ורחום אתה, ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום.
It was definitely worth turning back to that page.
Thank you.
We continue on page 253. In the middle of the page is a prayer called the Misha Berach. It is a modernized version of an ancient prayer for healing and gives us an opportunity to hold close in our hearts those who may be ailing, those who we love, and who are in our thoughts because of their illness, and whom there is nothing more that we can express to them than the wish that they recover. And so these words in this prayer captures our deepest wishes. The Amidah is at the center of our service. It is said individually. There are words on the page that you can read or words that you can hold in your heart and just allow your thoughts to wander. Again, the right side is the more classic prayer. The left side is interpretive. It begins on page 46 with a meditation of sorts and then continues through to page 62. Amidah means standing, so we say the prayer standing. I'll ask you to rise. When you've had an opportunity for your own thoughts or the words on the pages, you can go ahead and be seated. Prayers for the U.S. and Israel are on pages 258 and 59. I will be speaking at greater length about Memorial Day, so I'm just going to read the prayer. I don't want anyone to think that I have forgotten about the significance of this weekend. And then we'll continue with a prayer for Israel. It is a week of significance because this is the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. When I was a student at Hebrew Union College, we first didn't understand why the walls of the college are so thick on the side facing the old city, and why the windows were so narrow. It made for terrible views. But it was explained to us by the architects of the building that when Hebrew Union College, the rabbinical seminary, was first built, it was built right on the border between the Jewish city of Jerusalem and the city of Jerusalem that was in possession of the Jordanians. And because it was a dangerous place to be in, right outside the college there were barbed wire barricades and tank barricades and walls and all kinds of things. They were given this worthless piece of land, those Reform Jews, to build their college, and they built it to be a fortress of sorts. Well, after 1967, the barriers disappeared, and that worthless piece of land became one of the best pieces of real estate in Jerusalem. And now there are weddings and bar mitzvahs held there, and they've built beautiful overlooks that have a view of the old city walls. And the beauty of a city where you can drive from one side to the other and go to the old city and do your shopping, and go to the new city and do your shopping and do your eating in both sides. And if you forget your phone charger, you can go to the Arab quarters of the old city, and they're open on Shabbat, and buy a new phone charger. And if it's Friday and you're in the Arab quarter and you forget your phone charger, you can go to the Jewish side and buy your phone charger. It's a perfect setup, sometimes. But we give thanks that the city is a city united once again. Prayer for our country. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us to all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love and spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. The significance of the weekend is sometimes lost on Americans who don't have relatives who served in the armed services. And it's appropriate that we pause and take a moment to reflect, not only remember, but reflect on how this day can have meaning to us, this weekend can have meaning to us. The words I'm going to share are actually inspired by some Talmud study that I'm doing with some colleagues. Without going into too much depth, we're looking at some of the texts on Jewish martyrdom and what it means to be a martyr in the Jewish tradition. And as with many things in the Jewish tradition, we're very ambivalent. There's a lot of ambivalence throughout history about it. But one of the more famous martyrs, I'm going to tell you about his story in a second, I think gives us a pause to reflect on what it means to declare someone a martyr and the significance and meaning that can have on a day like today. So I'm going to tell you two stories from two very different times in history. And at first, it may appear like they have nothing in common, separated by thousands of years, separated by oceans, separated by cultural differences, all kinds of things. But the most important lesson I think we can draw from the two stories is the way that they actually do overlap and intersect. So the first one is going to take us back 2,000 years. This is actually the one that I studied in the Talmud group. Back 2,000 years to Israel under Roman rule. Then it was called Palestine by the Romans. And it's a story of a poor shepherd who fell in love with a wealthy Jerusalemite's daughter, a Jewish woman, Jewish man, Jewish woman. The daughter that this man fell in love with was Rachel. Now the father of the woman was appalled that his daughter would fall for such a poor, uneducated, and simple man, and he did probably the worst thing that any parent could do to keep two people apart. He forbid them from seeing each other. Needless to say, that didn't work. Even then, it didn't work. And by some accounts, as the story is told, he actually drove his daughter out of the house. Of course, they married. They lived in poverty. But Rachel believed that her husband had the capacity to be a great scholar, and so she convinced him to go study in what was higher education in that day, yeshiva. And so she worked hard so he could go to yeshiva, and of course her hunch was right, or we wouldn't have a story. He was brilliant. The name of this great scholar, how's your Jewish, Melton grads, do you know who I'm talking about? Bingo. His name was Akiva, or Akiba, anglicized. So after 12 years of studying yeshiva, he came back, and as he stood at the threshold of his house about to go in, he overheard his wife talking to a friend, and she said, and you know what? I would gladly work another 12 years if he were to study some more because of how brilliant he is. Well, he heard those words, he turned around without greeting his wife, and he went back to school. Now, but they loved each other. She wasn't sending him off. This was her commitment to him. At least that's the story they tell. So he became Akiva. We're still talking about him today because he became known as one of the greatest rabbinic sages of his generation, if not all generations. I wish I could say the couple lived happily ever after, but the truth is they didn't, because this was also a time of great turmoil, and it was a time when there was a revolt between the Romans and the Israelites were revolting against, so the Jews back then were revolting against rebelling against the Romans. And Akiva became a member of a band of guerrilla rabbis, believe it or not, opposing the Romans. It was during the Bar Kokhba rebellion is when he rose to prominence. And Akiva rallied the troops to fight with his exhortations drawn from teachings of the Torah, the Bible, of Jewish tradition. And the Romans decreed, they were onto this, so they decreed that Torah could not be taught in public. So what did Akiva do as his act of defiance? He taught Torah in public. And the Romans caught him. And they tried him and they convicted him. It was probably a foregone conclusion. And the punishment in those days was not just imprisonment. The punishment was something called flaying to death, which means that, forgive me, this is before dinner, but using a rake to take one's skin off. And as Akiva lay dying with this horrible, painful death, he famously said the words of the Shema, the 6 words that we recited, we sang standing up in the middle of the service, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And his students turned to him and they said, Rabbi, this is what you can say? You have nothing else to say to us? And he said, exactly, this is what I'm going to say. Now I know what it truly is to love God with all my heart, my might, and my soul. And as we tell that story, Akiva is one of the greatest Jewish martyrs. We tell his story in the afternoon on Yom Kippur. He's a martyr because he stood strong against the oppressive forces that would have contained or eliminated Judaism. He stood strong because he sought to uphold the principles and the rights of the Jewish people, to teach and learn Torah in public, not to be secreted away in dungeons. He sanctified the Jewish cause and stood up for the fact that it was right and just, and he gave his life for a higher purpose. And he believed that he had no choice but to practice his life as he did and make the decisions that he did, and we're still telling his story thousands of years later. So now let's go forward 2,000 years to not quite our time. The year is 1967. David Ives and Joyce Stenke are 2 young lovers engaged to be married. Now, unlike Akiva and Rachel, their parents did not oppose the marriage. It was scheduled, as every marriage is scheduled, except for David was drafted. And so before their wedding day, he headed off to Vietnam. Within 7 weeks of being overseas, he was killed. Shortly after, Joyce, still mourning for the man that she thought would be her husband, decided that she could not sit idly by stateside while people were fighting and being killed overseas. And so she sought to honor his sacrifice. So she signed up. The only choice women had in those days was to sign up for the American Red Cross, or she saw it. And she became what is called a donut dolly. Donut dolly. It was her job to offer smiles and coffee and donuts to soldiers overwhelmed by the fatigue of battle, overwhelmed or overcome by the pain of their wounds or the terror of what it is to be on the front lines of a war. And surely in Vietnam, Joyce saw carnage, and she saw friends die, and she knew that when she traveled from place to place, even with the Red Cross on her van, that she risked ambushes and booby traps, and many of her colleagues, her nurse colleagues, were lost. She never picked up a weapon, but she knew the ravages of war. After every trauma, she'd pick herself up, and she'd turn around and she'd bring hope and she'd bring inspiration and she'd bring uplift to the next soldier who became her charge as a donut dolly. It was her job, along with the countless other women that served with her, to bring a touch of home to American troops. So Joyce came home after the war, and she married and she continued her life, but she kept Dave's letters, and she held on to them, and the last letter he wrote to her was signed, "My deepest love, Dave." She will carry the scars of war forever. And when she dies, may she live a long time, but when she dies, Memorial Day will honor her along with the 5,000 women who served with her in Vietnam. And it will honor the thousands of others who served in the Korean War and World Wars I and II. And of course, it will honor the hundreds of thousands of men who perished fighting overseas. Memorial Day is more than a long weekend. It's more than a great time for weddings and barbecues and the first days of the beach and the beginning of summer. It's about American martyrs. If we could call Rabbi Akiva a Jewish martyr, then we can call our soldiers American martyrs. Because what are martyrs? They stood against oppressive forces, just like Akiva. They upheld, in this case, American rights and principles, and they sanctified the American cause with their deaths. And they believed that they couldn't turn their back on this country's needs, because of that, they have become our sacred dead. Akiva died al-Kiddush Hashem, is the expression, sanctifying God's name. As I said, we tell the story on Yom Kippur as an example of how far one might go to uphold one's integrity and one's beliefs and one's values and one's principles. Memorial Day is a time to tell the stories of our soldiers, of our martyrs, to remind us that their sacrifices are, if the word can be used in a secular context, their sacrifices are holy. Now, you may be a pacifist. You may have marched against one of those wars. However, we all can agree that the people who took up arms, who believed they had no choice but to answer this country's call, whether they were drafted or volunteered, that it's on us, the living, to honor their decision that they chose to respond to the call of service and to step up from their perspective, for the ideals of this country, to stand against the injustice and the violence and the perpetrators of human cruelty that unfortunately have not been vanquished from our world. Each story of a soldier, of a nurse, a Red Cross worker, is the story of a sacred American martyr. And I want to invite Sarah to come forward and read a tribute that was written by a visitor to the Vietnam Veteran War Memorial. The woman's name who wrote this is Racheline Maltese. And as you'll hear, this is her tribute and her promise to the American martyrs.
I'm a storyteller. I came here to write about this place, but that's suddenly not what I'm doing. I cried here at your wall today, but I don't know a single person on it. Every time I see a name that reminds me of one I know, I twitch. I do know people who were there. I do know how easily things could be reversed. And I don't know what I'd do without these people, so I guess I need to thank you for them. I'm only 21. I don't remember the war when it was happening. I did not learn about it in school. To see these men and women with their shirts and flags shakes me. Seeing the things people have left here shakes me. A picture of Jimi Hendrix, a bottle of Seagram 7, a pack of cigarettes have reduced me to tears. I wonder if you watch us, if you see us, if you'd like to say thank you for these gifts. I wonder if we mourn for you or for ourselves. I came here recently before dawn, and it was empty. The wind was knocking over your flowers, and squirrels were playing on top of your black ledge. I stood at the apex of a wall, I guess at the apex of a war, and it started to pour. I just stood there. I live near here, so I visit often now. Thank you for giving me something to understand, or to try to. There is very little I understand. I can give you nothing but these words. But I promise I'll bring my kids here one day. Make them remember. Make it somehow more than just another story.
And it is on us to tell their stories and to recognize these American martyrs. And so we recite the Kaddish on page 294, a tribute using ancient language to not only remember our own beloveds, but also those who have given their lives for the cause that allows us to appreciate our freedom. And sadly, we also have to mention and hold close in our hearts those who died in Manchester, England, and those who were murdered, didn't die, those who were murdered in Manchester, England, and those who were murdered also in the Coptic Christians who were murdered in Egypt as well. It's been a painful week. As is our custom, Sarah and I will look around the room, and if you are here observing the yahrzeit or anniversary of a loved one, or in a period of a week of mourning or the first 30 days of mourning, we'll ask you to say the name of your loved one. So if you're in the first 30 days, would you please rise, 30 days of mourning? If you are observing the yahrzeit, the anniversary of the death of a loved one, please rise. We stand together as we recite the Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkada shemei Rabbi, b'yama divrach utei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, b'agalau v'zman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbi mevarach le'olam olamei al-maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. Taleh v'talal shemei l'kudashah b'richu. Le'elah min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'miran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all the world, as we all say, amen. Amen. Please be seated. I'd like to invite Shelley Levy to come forward, please. Member of our board to say a few words.
Good evening, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome all of you. It's good to see so many people here. My name is Shelley Levy. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of Stephen Wise, And I'm really happy that so many of us are here. If you look in This Week at Wise, you'll see that we have a lot of things going on at the temple, both inside the temple, and if you check our website, a lot of things going on outside the temple that we participate in. Right now, we're raising money, talking about soldiers. We're raising money for Homes for Heroes. It's a project that the temple sponsors under Rabbi Stern, that we buy items for newly housed, formerly homeless veterans. And right now, there's a big request for refrigerators, stoves, and mattresses. If you can imagine, we move them into apartments and they don't have these very basic things, in addition to towels and sheets and other things as well. On June 20th, we're having Bret Stephens, famous newspaper editorialist, formerly of the Wall Street Journal for 10 years, and now at the New York Times. I've heard Bret Stephens many times at the AIPAC Policy Conference Convention, where he's there every year, and that's preceded by us making sandwiches for a homeless shelter in North Hollywood. On June 6th, I invite you all to the congregational meeting. It's here at 6 o'clock in the evening. And as members of the congregation, you should come, find out what's going on, find out about our budget. Everybody is invited. Come participate. It's our congregation, and we need your input. You'll see also that we're having a special celebration for Rabbi Zeldin's 97th birthday. God bless him. On Friday, June 9th, 8 o'clock. And so we invite you all certainly to come to Rabbi Zeldin's special celebration. There are many other things going on at the temple, so please read about them, check our website, and if you have any questions, certainly about Homes for Heroes, about AIPAC, or anything else going on at the temple, I'll be outside, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. And if you're new to the temple, if this is your first time, welcome. We're very happy to have you. And I saw Lucy Harrell, our membership director, and she'd be happy to answer any questions, as I will, and I'll be outside to greet you. And thank you, Rabbi Stern, for the beautiful, beautiful sermon about our veterans. And Sarah, I'm happy to be here on your inaugural first evening. And thank you all for being here. Shabbat Shalom.
Arissa, I know that your family is going to fly back for the congregational meeting, because there's nothing more exciting than hearing about a temple budget. All right, Arissa and Alex, we did not forget you. In fact, we saved you for the Kiddush, for best for last, so come on up. This has been a longer journey than just coming from Boston to Los Angeles. For Alex, he comes back and forth. He lives here, he grew up here. But for Arissa, this is a journey that takes her not only from Boston to Los Angeles, but also into Judaism. About 3 weeks ago, a month ago, 3 weeks ago, Arissa took the plunge, literally, and became a part of the Jewish community. And I was watching her, and she was singing better than some of the rest of you who've grown up here. She was doing good work. So it's a pleasure to welcome you, and a pleasure to be able to not only give you words of blessing today, but also to be present at your wedding, to have worked with you long distance. I've seen them in person several times. I've watched them grow up, but we did FaceTime. So for our pre-wedding sessions, they were only about this big on an iPhone, but now it's good to see them full size. I want you to join me, though, in this blessing, all of us, because they have a wonderful community here with them, and it doesn't fall upon me alone to do this. Whenever we say a blessing, we're channeling the words of the community, but in this particular case, I want you actually to join me. So I'm going to ask you to rise and open your books to page 263, as all of us together wish this wonderful young couple all of the goodness we could possibly wish for them, and capture that in the words of this poem that expresses our hopes for them as they join their lives. And they're, by the way, two doctors, I should say. Memphis, right? Nashville. No, God. Someplace in Tennessee they're going. No, they're going to Nashville. They already own a home, and they're serving two different hospitals or the same hospital? Same hospital, but you'll never see each other because you're in different departments, and you'll be, right, hopefully your sleep cycles will be somewhere linked. So who could be more proud than their parents and all of us, right? So we say, source of laughter and gladness, let your presence accompany these loving companions. Pour love over them. Grant them growth, each alone and together. May health and devotion, laughter and understanding abound for them. May they have the strength to share life's sorrows. May their love deepen and flower. Open their hearts to one another. And may their hands be open to family and to friends, to our people Israel, to all humanity, as we all say, amen. I'd like Alex's father, Henry, and his grandfather, Hugo. Hugo's been a member of this congregation forever. Is Isabel watching? Okay. Isabel couldn't be here, Hugo's wife, but she is here in spirit with us to celebrate. As we say, the Kiddush is on page 5, of the book. She gets one too. Yeah.
All set?
Whenever anyone says organized religion, I just said, just watch us do our stuff. Nothing organized about religion.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho, v'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit, ki hu yom tehila lemikraei kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kiddashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. Mazel tov. Mazel tov.
It's only grape juice. We're on page 282. It's grape juice. We conclude with Oseh Shalom, Mazel Tov to both of you and to your families. We continue on page 294, the last three lines of Hebrew. Above, the English translation is at the bottom of the page as well, a prayer for peace, because this world needs prayers and actions.
Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Ya'aseh shalom bimroma. Ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Shalom bimroma. Ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma. Ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ya'aseh shalom. Ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'alko Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom. Ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Before I say Shabbat Shalom to you, I want to say Yasher Koach to Sarah and congratulate her on her first complete service. It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you all so much. Shabbat,
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Please join us for the Motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai